Everyone has seen, more and more equipment being moved on the roads, and that's necessary. It's necessary for farmers to get their jobs done. And, most people work really hard to try to time that movement of equipment so that it's during a lower traffic time, especially if you are unfortunate enough to have to move your equipment on a heavily traveled rural roadway. Also, the rest of us, who are just driving to work or home from work or, running errands, just motorists out there on the road, if we could just stop for a minute ourselves and take a step back and look at this picture clearly, that these folks are, moving heavy equipment, slow-moving equipment, respect it, first of all, respect the size and the power of that equipment, and also the fact that there's a job that needs to be done. We also need to pay really close attention to, where that equipment might be moving.
Summer has officially arrived. While children are out of school and many people take time off to travel or work on projects around the house, it's a busy time for Kansas farmers. They're tending to their fields, harvesting crops, and moving livestock from one pasture to another so that cattle have fresh new grass to forage on. Often this means driving large equipment on major highways and rural roads. As a result, it's critical that motorists have an increased awareness of farm equipment showing up on roadways. On today's Sound Living, sharing the road with farm equipment. Sound Living is a weekly public affairs program produced by Research and Extension at Kansas State University. I'm Jeff Wichman. According to the National Safety Council, about one-third of tractor-related deaths occur on public roads. Many may assume this statistic is associated with bad weather or hazardous conditions, but studies have shown that nearly 80% of all tractor vehicle collisions occur in daylight and on straight, dry roads. The most common types of road accidents are left-hand turns and rear-end collisions. K-State Farm Safety Specialist Carrie Ebert says it's up to both farmers and motorists to share the roads safely, which includes motorists being more patient behind the wheel and farmers not becoming fatigued or inattentive.
We want to make sure that people, are thinking about how busy they're going to be. We know that in the back of our minds, but just to stop and take stock of the tasks that need to be accomplished each day and make sure that, we're taking time for ourselves, first of all, to eliminate or reduce those types of farm accidents that can be caused by fatigue.
That is really one of the big things, isn't it? Fatigue and inattentiveness.
Yes, it really is, and especially this time of the year because there's so much happening all at the same time. And we get into kind of one of those early summer storm patterns, and so we try to work all of those tasks around the weather and the conditions in the fields, maintenance issues. The occasional breakdown still happens, so that adds stress. The push to get something planted before rain or something harvested before rain also becomes a stressful time. And so fatigue can manifest itself in a lot of ways. And I think over the years, we see more and more and more studies about the effects of that stress and fatigue on our bodies. And where farming, everything we do seems to be so physical that to keep, our bodies in tip-top shape, we really need to try to keep the stress levels as low as we can. And one of the ways you can do that is to get plenty of sleep at night. Now, that's real easy for me to sit here and say that in a studio talking through the radio, but it really is. If there's a few minutes during the day that you can take a nap to kind of rejuvenate yourself, that's great. And there's no harm, no shame in that, especially if the nights get to be pretty short as far as, working well into the night as it stays lighter, longer as we move towards summer. That longer day tends to make us overdue.
And really trying to take some breaks throughout the day.
Breaks throughout the day, plenty of rest when you can get it. So like I say, a full 8 hours is great if you can get it, but that's a luxury. Plenty of hydration. This heat wave that we've had has really highlighted that need to stay hydrated. It's typically not this warm this early in the season, but hydration can contribute to that fatigue. Proper nutrition also. Meals on the run can be a challenge. But if we, pack those meals full of good nutrition, nutrient-dense foods, that keeps us going too. Maybe, plenty of carbs to keep the energy level going, plenty of fluids, but then, the proteins, the fruits and the vegetables, everything that keeps our whole body system going. If we can keep ourselves going, then it's easier to keep the machinery running like it should be running because, of course, that's the matter at hand is to get a wheat harvest in and hauled to the elevator or to the storage wherever it needs to go after it's done, which kind of leads us into, some of those traffic safety issues where I like to talk, not only to farmers out there, but also to everybody else who isn't farming and sharing the road with the farmers. This is, everyone has seen, more and more equipment. It kind of starts maybe in March or April, and we see more and more equipment being moved on the roads. And that's necessary. It's necessary for farmers to get their jobs done. And, most people work really hard to try to time that movement of equipment so that it's during a lower traffic time, especially if you are unfortunate enough to have to move your equipment on a heavily traveled rural roadway. Also, the rest of us, who are just driving to work or home from work or, running errands, just motorists out there on the road, if we could just stop for a minute ourselves and take a step back and look at this picture clearly that these folks are, moving heavy equipment, slow-moving equipment, respect it, first of all, respect the size and the power of that equipment, and also the fact that there's a job that needs to be done. We also need to pay really close attention to, where that equipment might be moving. Sometimes drivers can be fooled by the flashing red lights, and it's difficult to, if you're not paying really close attention, to tell when the four-way flashers turn into maybe a left turn signal. That's only the left side is flashing, and that means that equipment's going to probably make a wide turn to the left if you're trying to pass. We see an awful lot of passenger vehicle, farm vehicle accidents with left turns off of especially paved roadways. That seems to be where people are in such a big hurry. But honestly, if you slow down and just follow them, think of all the beautiful nature you can see on the roadside. And one way to think of following, a slow-moving vehicle when you're upset or you're, in a big hurry is that it's not a whole lot different. The length of time, the farmer doesn't want to be out there on that road any longer than you want them out there either. They want to be in the field or safely tucked into the shed at home, wherever they're going. But it's not a lot different than sitting through a stoplight or two or three in town. And, we may not be real patient about that either, but we all certainly understand the bad consequences of running a red light, for example. So, again, if roadways are wide enough and it's safe to pass, then certainly you can pass slow-moving farm vehicles. But if it's not safe to pass, if it's hilly, if there are lots of curves, there's no reason to put people's lives in danger because every year we have an awful lot of roadway accidents, and it happens a lot during harvest time when there's just a tremendous amount of activity on the farm.
And by and large, they're really typically not traveling that far.
Exactly. If you see a farm vehicle, they're not going to be driving on that road for 20, 30 miles, most likely. Most folks, farm land that's fairly close to where they originated. And again, if you're a local and you kind of know the neighborhood, you know who's driving the tractor, you got a pretty good idea of which field they're going to turn into. But if you're not familiar and, you don't recognize the tractor or the piece of equipment as belonging to, your neighbor, Farmer Brown, then again, it's not going to take that much time to just wait till it's safe. And most likely, by the time patience totally wear out, then that slow-moving vehicle is going to be off the road and off doing what it needs to do because, again, these vehicles are not designed to drive on roadways. So they're, inherently a little bit unstable on a smooth surface. And so, again, that's why we really need to be careful, on the roadways, both motorists and then the operators of the farm equipment.
And once they get in the field, that can also be dangerous, too, especially if it's a rough field.
Yes, it can. And just recently we've had some pretty heavy rains, and so I suspect there might be some gullies formed, maybe underneath that thick stand of wheat in places. So, yeah, we're going to have to be real careful driving through the fields as we start harvest or taking vehicles out to haul grain to the elevator or move it out of the field. Combines are pretty heavy and look odd, but they're pretty stable machines. I think a bigger issue, especially with gullies that have washed that we're not aware of, and most people know their fields well enough to know where there's a gully, but if something has washed in a recent rainfall and formed, we need to be a lot more careful when we're using tractors out there, because their stability, sometimes is a lot less than a combine. But, either way, any type of farm equipment can inherently be unstable if it's way out of balance. And loads will shift. Heavy loads will shift the center of gravity and make them more unstable. So we just have to really be aware of what we're doing, how much time we have to do it, allow plenty of time to get the jobs done if we've got that luxury. And if not, then just use extra caution if you're trying to speed up a task that might need to really take a little longer than what we've got time to do.
What about in terms of personal safety? I've been hearing a lot about noise vibrations. I've been hearing about loud noises. All of that can have negative impacts.
Yeah, so hearing loss among farmers, I don't think there's probably any farmer or farm spouse out there who does, anybody over 40 probably understands the ramifications of loud noises. And in fact, it doesn't take very long without hearing protection, especially for a loud tractor. If you don't have the luxury of a cab, for example, I think about 4 minutes is as long as you can be on a tractor with no cab before you start to technically do damage to your ears. And there are any number of hearing protection devices, and they're available everywhere at big box stores, at farm supply stores, at the drugstore, everywhere. At the dollar stores, you can find hearing protection, lots of different kinds. And what we need to remember is that hearing protection earplugs, for example, have a noise reduction rating, or they'll have a number on them that's an NRR and then a number. It's usually a 2-digit number. And let's say that number is 27. So that means that's a noise reduction rating that reduces that noise level by 27 decibels. And that's all. It's not going to make you completely deaf to any other noises. It's just going to cut the noise a little bit. You'll still be able to hear if something goes, if the motor of the tractor, for example, starts, pulling really hard, that there's something wrong. If any noises, you still should be able to hear. But it reduces that noise level just enough that it can help prevent hearing loss. And again, that's very prevalent in the farming community because we don't use hearing protection typically, but it's so easy to use, those little earplugs. Or if you want to listen to the radio, or if you don't like the plugs, there are different ear muffs that you can wear. And again, every farm supply store has them. Every corner store has hearing protection. But it is very, very important because once that hearing loss happens, it's not something that we can get back. We can't exercise our way into better hearing.
I think you probably said it best when you pointed out the fact that this is really something that everyone needs to be aware of for the remainder of this summer. Is there's going to be farm traffic, there's going to be machinery on the roads, so slow down a little bit and be patient and be safe.
Yes. That's what we would like. We want everybody to make it through harvest and through the summer season and have an enjoyable summer, and to do so safely.
That's K-State Farm Safety Specialist Carrie Ebert. The National Safety Council encourages motorists to slow down when they see farm equipment ahead. Most farm equipment is only designed to travel at speeds of 15 to 25 miles per hour. Also, watch for the triangular slow-moving vehicle sign. These signs are only legally allowed on vehicles traveling less than 25 miles per hour. Don't speed past farm equipment because they can have parts that project outward that are difficult to spot at first glance. Also, the turbulence caused by a fast-moving vehicle could cause the machinery to sway and become unstable. Also, don't pull out in front of a slow-moving vehicle, then slow down suddenly. Tractors and machinery do not have the same ability to maneuver the road as smaller cars and trucks, and it takes them much longer to come to a stop. And always use caution and patience. Never take unnecessary risks. Ebert says the few extra minutes it takes to safely pass a slow-moving piece of farm equipment could save your life or someone else's. Sound Living is a weekly public affairs program produced by Research and Extension at Kansas State University. I'm Jeff Wichman, and this is the K-State Radio Network.